Welcome to Peace Freaks, a parenting and family podcast for the freaks, geeks, nerds, and weirdos, the outcasts who went on and had their own. We're used to being the exception to the rule, so come along with us as we try to also live exceptionally. We're here to help make you the best version of your freaky family. All right, welcome everyone to Peace Freaks. Lizzie and I are here today with Mr. John Bush. How are we doing there, John?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
We're interested in having John on because in the past couple months, with everything that's been going on in the world, self-sufficiency and trying to make sure all of our I's and T's are dotted and crossed, and we have the ability to take care of ourselves kind of become a top priority. And one of the things that I stumbled across while in that, trying to chase down every thread I could in that direction, was an idea that John had a number of years ago called freedom cells. And it sounds like a great idea, but as with all great ideas, especially when you're chasing down freedom and self-reliance, a lot of the people that you find in the space are, what do you call them? Very single men in their 40s with not a lot of responsibilities to other people. And so the things that you find that they would suggest don't necessarily work or work the same for someone who has a family, kids, basically other people to worry about, where, well, if I want to live in my car for the next 6 months, it's probably not an option. So I thought throwing the question to you, who's somebody who actually has family in his life and has more responsibilities than just yourself, you'd probably be the guy to talk to best about how that can work for somebody in our situation.
Yeah, so I have two kiddos. They are 7 and 9. My daughter just turned 9. My son is 7. And my parenting journey has been a wild, tumultuous one. And I've learned a whole lot and have kind of shifted my parenting ways ever so slightly to a more balanced approach. But I've had to shift my life in many ways. One of them was like my activism. I used to be a little more abrasive and police accountability in the cop's face, cussing them down. And then I got arrested when my daughter was 1, just a newborn really. And I was like, whoa, I really need to shift my tactics because I need to be there for mama and baby. And entrepreneurship has been a really big deal as well. When I first started with the kiddos, I was living in poverty as an impoverished activist, just fighting for the cause. And I realized that was not in the best interest of my children or my family. So that was a big focus for me the past few years, and really made some dramatic changes, opened up more choices, more opportunity, and you're more able to live your best life, in my opinion, whenever you have more access to money. And then finally, with things in perspective in the world that we're in, there was already a lot of craziness going on and a lot of tyranny and control, and a shift away from the family, the village, freedom towards centralization, coercion, control. And now there's all this crazy technocracy stuff using technology and surveillance in the wake of COVID. So I think it really amplifies the need for parents that are excited about freedom, that hold freedom as a high value, to really figure out ways that they can set the stage so that our children don't have to go through the same suffering, oppression, and tyranny that we've gone through and that people before us have gone through. And so that's really one of my big whys. I like to meditate and hone in on purpose and why, and children, whether it's activism or entrepreneurship or radical ways of organizing society, new ways of doing things like freedom cells. My kids have been one of my strongest whys.
It fascinates me because I remember a year ago, I was involved with a project with two of my friends called Freedom Song 365. And it was just going through and looking at like popular music of the past couple decades and looking for, messages with a libertarian bent. And I'm sitting down here writing my write-up on a song every night, just waiting for when the hell the door is going to bust in because my activism became, too overt. Or like I said something in one of my write-ups to just happen to find whatever algorithm is out there trying to find subversives. And I'm like, is this something I can be doing, something I should be doing? Like, am I putting my entire family at risk by doing this? Because, it's one thing for me to take on the mantle of, revolutionary, but I can't force that on my daughter either. Like that's not fair to her. She didn't make that choice. And I hear echoes of that when you're talking about you spending a night in the clinic. You're like, oh, maybe this isn't the best path here. Now, I guess I kind of jumped the gun because I was so excited to get in the conversation. What do you tell us a little bit about yourself, I guess?
Okay, well, I'm 36. I'm born and raised in Austin, Texas. I have been an activist for going on almost 20 years now. Since 2002, I caught a documentary about 9/11 and woke up to the treachery that occurred that day at the hands of the United States government and other intelligence agencies. And that led me down a pretty deep rabbit hole exploring the conspiratorial view of history. And then in 2007, I learned about libertarianism. I'd already heard about it in college. In college, I had an affinity for the founding fathers and the Bill of Rights and did some activism with the American Civil Liberties Union. And then when I learned about Ron Paul, everything really just clicked. And I guess I felt like I had a philosophical home. So I participated in the campaign there. And then after that, we founded a political action committee called Texans for Accountable Government, which is still around today, over 10 years. And we did a lot of great work in police accountability, surveillance state, firearms rights, trying to decriminalize cannabis in the state of Texas. But along the way, I met up with my mother's kiddos, my children's mother, my ex-wife. I prefer to say children's mother rather than ex-wife, right? Because I don't want to define her by that. But the mother of my children, we met and we really inspired each other to move from the political to the post-political.
Okay.
Political activism wasn't satisfying because, for example, we stopped police officers in Austin from being trained as phlebotomists, where they would do blood withdrawals on the side of the road if you were suspected of DWI.
Wow.
And that seemed really exciting, like a victory. But in reality, it wasn't a victory in that we reduced the size and scope of government and government interference in our lives. Really, we just slowed the growth of the tyranny.
Just a speed bump.
So rather than taking a couple steps forward, really it was 4 steps back instead of 5 steps back, because they still had federal money come in. They still enhanced their no refusal program, so on and so forth. So we started exploring alternative institutions, silver dimes, alternative economies, cryptocurrency came along. We were super interested and excited about that. And around 2014 is where I hatched the idea for the Freedom Cell Network, because I recognized there was a whole lot of libertarians and voluntarists, anarchists that wanted to opt out and that knew the most consistent thing to do is not participate at all with the state. And there's a handful of people that are actually doing that. And it's a different kind of lifestyle and definitely a lot more difficult if you have children. But I thought maybe the best way to help people feel more empowered to opt out is through strength in numbers. And so the Freedom Cell Network, a lot of it is about creating a community, creating a movement where we can all collectively engage in actions that support the individual sovereignty of the participants. And that's where we are today. Along the way, I founded a health company, Brave Botanicals. We sell kratom and CBD. And I'm super into entrepreneurship, and things have been going really well lately.
And clearly that shit is working, because you said 36 years old, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, you were aging a hell of a lot better than I am, bro. I'm 36 as well. And you look a hell of a lot more 36 than
thanks. Well, it's all about diet and lifestyle and stuff.
Yeah.
You mean I shouldn't?
That's not what I said, but yes, that's true.
You should have said that. You should have said, listen, fat boy, put the fork down.
No.
So practically, yeah. We will get a reverend here. I'm sorry. Practically, I love the idea of freedom cells, and I love the idea of opting out, because I mean and when I talk to my socialist friends, my biggest thing is, it's like, so when all this is said and done, like, in my worldview, you can do whatever you want. You just can't force me to do it. But in your worldview, I don't have the option of my worldview. I don't get to do what I want. And what I want is no bearings on anyone else. It's just to opt out of your system. And so anything that kind of lets me just say, no, we're going to take our ball and kind of come over here and do our own thing. That's immediately appealing to me. I don't know why that isn't appealing to every other human being on the planet, but it does seem to be a difficult thing to get people to jump on board with. But when I look at the Freedom Cells thing, and I sign up on the site, and first thing I notice is here in Ohio, there's not a ton of people on there. So
Yet.
connecting is immediately a little bit difficult there. But then I'm also left with the idea that, and maybe I'm conspiratorial here and just assume that everyone I'm talking to online is a Fed. Have you guys noticed any issues with that, or how like over the course of the project developing, infiltrators or things like that, or is there ways to prevent that?
That is a common concern amongst many people. We haven't had any issues yet. As I said before, I've been an activist going on 20 years, and I had my phases where I had that fear and anxiety about the door being kicked in for producing some sort of podcast or whatnot. But after tons of activism and even going to fusion centers, the Department of Homeland Security information gathering and intelligence sharing centers, like physical buildings where they have FBI and Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, local police, local sheriffs, they're all there together. And a lot of times they're tracking activists. Me and my ex would go there. Me and the mother of my children would go to these buildings and show up uninvited with open records requests. We even crashed the National Department of Homeland Security Fusion Center conference in New Orleans. And so after all of that activism and all sorts of abrasive stuff, I even wound up in these Fusion Center databases. A police officer that arrested me, the same arrest when my daughter was born. It's my second arrest. I was arrested before, but I didn't have kids, so it's a different story. He did a threat report on me because I posted about freedom cells and said, rather than filming the police when they're beating someone up, what if we all rushed them and physically subdued them and kicked them out of the community?
Okay.
Cops didn't like that. But I ended up in a little Fusion Center database, but no one's coming to kick in my door. I'm not breaking the law, right? So organizing in freedom cells and mutual aid groups and working on gardens in each other's backyards is not illegal, nor is producing content and saying provocative things. It's not even illegal to explore the topic of when should we defend ourselves against the police. So
bandwagon is just a fucking song. Possession, everyone's obsession. Bandwagon, perception, everyone's obsession. Bandwagon, millions of bulbs turning from bright to dim. Shut your mind off, so blinding to the hymns. Parasiting your brain, telling to assimilate. Instincts are gone, Baghdad declawed.
See, that's not my concern. My concern is just going to drop a bag of crystal meth in my backyard when they come to do the CPS visit.
Well, so we can allow that fear, which is rational, to dictate our actions, or we can understand that the government harms people.
Yeah.
So you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. So if the government can come and plant something on you, then you might as well get active and have the community and the standing in the community necessary in order to throw that off if that were to happen to you. And a lot of people are like, well, what if being part of the Freedom Cell network puts me on some sort of list? And to that, I always say, like, if we're all on the list, then the list is pretty irrelevant. But the idea is, so if you don't have the Freedom Cell network and the government hurts you or harms you, then you're all alone and you're much more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so the fear of the government harming you prevents you from joining this safety net, and then conversely, if the government harms you and you are part of a network of over 4,300 people all across the globe, then you're going to have people that support you. You're going to be tapped in with attorneys, people that can give you advice and strategies. Some people, they can show up to your court hearing. Ideally, I'd like to have enough people in the network where if the police or the CPS show up to your home, you put an alert out through some sort of messaging app and physically people show up to support you and defend you.
Yeah.
And 10 people show up and they're like, we're not letting you take this family away or take these children away. You're going to take every single one of us. We'll physically put ourselves in the way and prevent you from doing that. So, it's time. There's a lot of nasty stuff going on. We can't just sit idly by because we're concerned. It's time to take a little bit of risk. And again, it's not even a risk. Nothing's illegal.
Yeah.
Until we opt out, that's going to be illegal, but that's maybe down the road.
Well, yeah. And like I said, obviously my fears, I've reached a point where like the fear, it's not going to stop me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for exactly the reasons you said. Like whether or not they're going to do it, they can do that in any situation. And if I have backup, that's at least something. So we'll take that.
Yep.
What are you thinking, Liz?
I
imagine your fears are probably way worse than mine would be.
It's not even that. Honestly, my biggest thing is just making those relationships. So I guess if I had a question, it would probably be that. How do you see that process going from you log into Freedom Cells, you find people around you, and then what would you expect to be kind of the next steps in creating that community?
Okay. First, let me share a little bit about the organizational structure, and then I'll answer your question in explaining that.
Okay.
So the Freedom Cell Network has a very innovative means of organizing our fellow humans with relationships. So it's all centered around what we call the inner cadre group, which is a group of approximately 8 people. We choose the number 8 because 8 is the optimal number of people in a group for maximum creativity.
Oh.
This comes from research from this guy named John David Garcia. It was popularized in the Liberty Movement with a guy named Bob Podolsky, who worked with John David Garcia. And so if you have like 5 people, there's not enough ideas. There's not enough people to implement the ideas. If you have like 15 people, it starts to become bureaucratic and there's a difference in vision. So 8 people is the optimal number. So we encourage to have an inner cadre group of approximately 8. Doesn't have to be 8. It's not like a top-down thing. It's just an idea. People can vary it as they will. And you work with those 8 to establish common goals. So what we encourage early stuff is preparedness goals, like having 3 months food storage, having firearms, knowing how to use them safely and proficiently, having an encrypted or off-grid communication channel, and having a bug out plan, a place to go when crap hits the fan, whether you go together or you go separate, or one of the 8 people has like 2 acres and on the outskirts of town, that's where you go. That's just preparedness. For parents, you could work together on common goals like we want to take our kids out of public school. So we are going to first choose a homeschool curriculum and we're all going to chip in to buy it. Then we are going to set a schedule where Tom and Nancy take lead on the kids on Monday and Friday, and Susan and Jerry take lead on Tuesday and Thursday. Wednesday is the day that we all go to the museum or go to the park together, so on and so forth. And then every Friday in the evening, we do an accountability meeting where we get together and we talk about how things went and who needs what and what we can do. So there's all different types of goals. So that's the inner cadre group. And then the magic is you link up with 7 other inner cadre groups. So now you have a middle cadre group of approximately 64. Ideally, the inner cadre group is super local. The middle cadre group is perhaps spread across a city. And then the middle cadre group, approximately 64, 8 groups of 8, links up with other middle cadre groups in the state or the region. And that forms what we call a meta cadre group. Eventually, all the meta cadres are linked up to form the broader Freedom Cell network. And so this arrangement allows for the growth of the network. And as more and more people come into the network, it doesn't become hierarchical, it spreads horizontally. And essentially, there's this term autopoiesis. It's a biological term where like a cell self-replicates itself.
Okay.
So before, when you just had a middle cadre group in your city, approximately 64 people, now you have approximately 512 people in your city. It just becomes a meta cadre in the city. So that's not the most important things. And sometimes I fear that like I'm losing people when I talk about that term.
Well, no, I like it. My concern is that so like within so we're here up in Cleveland, and I get on the website and I can find I think like 5 people within like 2 hours of me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, how would you even begin to try and like get something together with like that much geographic space between people?
Sure.
I mean, it'd be very difficult to develop trust in that kind of situation, and it's just kind of, well, I'm just happen to geographically be in a place that it's probably not going to work for the moment.
So what's the phrase? Rome wasn't built
Right.
overnight.
Yeah.
So imagine that this is still a society that's in its infancy.
Mhm.
And to answer your question, Liz, once you sign up on the website, you are asked to put your name and share some skills and then put an address. You can put your home address, although I'd caution against putting your home address. Maybe put the park down the road or the local coffee shop.
Sure.
And then you go to the member map and you can find people in your area.
Mhm.
Now, if you live in a major city, chances are there's quite a few people in your area. There's over 4,300 people that are on this map participating in the network to some degree. And so the thing to do is to try to at least make contact with these people, start conversations digitally, see where they're coming from, see if they're fellow parents, so on and so forth. Of course, at this point, even though they are more like-minded than the general public, they're still strangers, right? And
Sure.
some of them could be crackpot, nuts, loony libertarians, right? In fact, a good chunk of them probably are. So from there, it's all about vetting. But the thing is, a lot of people, they rely on the network. And when they go in their area, you guys are in better shape having 5 people in the area compared to some people that have no people.
Sure.
And then they're like, well, there's nobody there, and they're kind of defeated. So I created this Freedom Cell manual. It's like a working thing. It's been crowdsourced. Everyone gives their input. And it's like, okay, so you open the website and you find that you're a lone wolf. You're the only person in the area. Well, here's some practical steps and strategies that you can take to go find the others, to find other people. You can go to farmers markets. You can get involved in the local homeschooling meetup. You can go to prepper groups, gun rights groups, the Libertarian Party in the county, and maybe there's voluntarist if you're lucky in your area. And so there's a little bit of work involved. And if there's not already people there, then if you're really motivated about the idea and think that it has value, then it's up to that person to help build what's going on.
Okay.
And then for now, if there's only 5 people in the area, then you could at least form up with those 5 people. And one strategy that I have in the manual is, so let's say there's 5 people in the area, and now the goal for you 5 is to go find 8 people. Now you all of a sudden you have 40 people, right? And it's all, everyone's at different levels, and not everyone's like a skilled organizer, been doing this for 20 years, you know? So it's all about, and then just because people aren't in your area doesn't mean you can't get value from the network as a whole with advice, trading seeds. If you wanted some sort of digital marketing or whatever, maybe there's someone in the network that you could work with. So like I said before, the idea is 5 years old, but it's only in the past year or so really started to take off. And it's now growing exponentially with COVID. We have over 4,300. Actually, now it's like 46 or 4,700. A few months ago, it was 2,000.
Oh, wow.
So here we are going. Yeah.
That's very. I mean, it's probably been a couple months since I've checked the website, so it might behoove me to get on there again and see what's going on.
Yeah,
well,
man.
I mean, that makes sense though, because people who are interested in opting out enough to go to like your farmers market or your homeschool group might be interested in, more interested in freedom than say the average normie.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely know there's a mom I know that I could probably like tap and say, hey, there's this idea. You should check it out.
Yeah. And with parents, that's a natural, like homeschool communities, they're all about community and connecting and doing alternatives.
Depends, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends on the area.
Ours completely disintegrated when the coup happened because...
Oh, man. Yeah. A lot of people really...
Well, when the members start putting up American flags in the front yard and talking about the newest declarations from the governor, I kind of pull out of that. I'm like, perhaps this isn't a relationship I need to be putting more time and effort into.
Yeah. What, you guys are in Cleveland?
Yeah.
I bet there's a local Libertarian Party. That's always a good place to start.
Oh, there is. Yeah.
Yep. And they're horrible leftists, even by my lefty standards.
But there is a mom who was in my homeschool group and we still talk periodically and I do think she'd be more on that side. So I could see what you mean about trying to spread the message. That's cool.
Liz, I was just turned off by the idea of the kids being on cell phones walking on opposite sides of the streets.
Oh, yeah, that is weird.
That is not a play date. That is a waste of our time.
That's what their parents are wanting to do?
Some of them, yeah.
Well, we'll have the kids and they'll like be talking on the phone, but they'll be on opposite sides of the street. So we're managing social distancing. But I mean, that's like, oh, hey, there's your friend, but you guys can't hang out. So, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll just play Caribou at home. What?
Yeah. One of the things, like, I know there's this concept of pods.
Uh-huh.
I know everyone has varying degrees of risk and awareness of the fraud that is COVID and this whole like New World Order agenda that's behind it, really. But, in order to I try to honor people where they're at, although it's really got me having to flex my compassion and patience muscle because I just think it's total BS. But I try to recognize that some people watch mainstream media all the time. Some people have health problems. Some people perhaps have lost a family member or whatnot. Although most of the people that, they may have been close to dying anyway. That's what the statistics show. But, this whole idea of pod is where you link up with a few other families and you all commit to not go and mix it up with other people, but you will mix it up with each other.
Yeah.
So the Freedom Cell thing is kind of similar. You could have your own little Freedom Cell pod.
Yeah.
And then when you're recruiting new people too, I think it's important for we libertarians, and especially if you're like a consistent libertarian, like a voluntarist or an agorist, revolutionary market anarchist, there's not a ton of us out there. Although, I could position that 2 ways. There actually are quite a damn few, a lot of them, like tens of thousands.
This all took over.
What's that?
Yeah, the whole coup thing. I forced, I think, a lot of the voluntarist types that were on the fence. Like, no, agorisms. That's where it's at. The government's a lost cause of any kind.
Oh yeah. But we don't. If that's the only people we associate with, then we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Sure.
Not only because there's a lot of good human beings out there that don't necessarily agree with us 100%, but additionally, if we're good advocates for the philosophy of liberty, then we can associate associate with folks that are on the fence, or maybe they like, at least if they're not some big controlling Democrat, they're like a conservative small government Republican and they're already skeptical of the role of government in humans' lives or whatever, then we can kind of associate with them and then slowly drop little plant seeds of liberty and maybe bring them over to our way of thinking.
Sure.
I've always kind of been of the mind of like the shiny agorist city on the hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or like we'll just go and create our good place, and then people will see how good it is and defect. That's the goal. That's my goal.
Intentional communities are a good thing. Let's do it.
There we go.
That's a very real goal. And there's a lot of people in the Freedom Cell Network that are interested in the whole dream of buying property together and forming our own intentional community.
Our good friends over at the Tasting Anarchy podcast, they started doing a thing down in Texas, Childeberg, a couple years ago, and it just started out as like they wanted to do basically Pork Fest for Texas because it's too damn far away from Pork
Cool.
Fest, and eventually
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of morphed into, well, why don't we have like Childeberg and have it actually be like a place?
Yeah.
And he's the guy behind it, Jacob, is talking about looking for land in like New Mexico or Texas, someplace where they can buy the property. And I think he's talking about managing it more like a hunting camp kind of thing,
Mhm.
like where it'll be a city, but you Airbnb the whole thing in the off seasons for people who use it, so you can finance it that way. But the place exists for you
Yeah.
and those kind of people. Me and him, we talk about it, and it's just a permaculture forests everywhere you go. Like the whole thing
Yeah.
just kind of being done that way.
That's brilliant. Well, let's shift from talking to doing.
Yeah.
Enough people want to do it.
He's actually been out looking at land. So at least that's that. I don't know how serious you are if you get to that point, and I know Spearco's been talking about it a lot on the podcasts.
Oh, fuck off a stand. I don't know if y'all cuss on your podcast.
Oh, yeah,
I think I
yeah.
heard a curse word. Okay.
I've said far worse than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spearco's the man. He's all about it. Me and my partner, we are saving up currently to buy a piece of property on the outskirts of Central Texas and do a community.
can see the story drawing to a close. I need an intervention. I need a place to hide. I need someone to sing to me the way back to life. I need a conversation. I need a path to choose. I need to know that everything's not set up to lose. And show me how your heart could change a life. Direct me to a place I'd never find alone. And listen to me, love, won't you try? Don't let the door close until I'm safely inside.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm really curious about, is because you're someone who is actively involved in this. How does this kind of work, and what does it look like in your life? Like, is it like a thing where you have like group meetings? Is it a thing where you just kind of informally talk to people? Like, how does that kind of like day to day work for you?
In regards to building a community?
Freedom cells, like just the conceptually, because like, it's a wonderful concept, but
Okay, cool.
taking it from concept to the actual implementation, like when you're running, what's it look like?
Yeah, sure. So we have a Freedom Cell intercadre group that is me, my girlfriend, one of my best friends, my former roommate, and another guy named Rick. So it's 4 people. It's not the full 8. And again, it doesn't have to be the full 8. Maybe we never get 8. Maybe 6 is the optimal number. But for now, those are the 4 that we're rolling with. And we check in with one another. We go on hikes. We're planning to all get our license to carry together. We're all growing food. We're all supporting one another. And there's some other intercadre groups in Central Texas that are starting to build as well. And so the idea is that we all link up and support one another and do things together. And so the other thing is there's other, I'm the founder of this whole concept and promote it a lot, but there's other groups that are more advanced and further along than myself.
Sure.
which I think is cool, right? Because I'd like to be leading the way and leading by example, but there's other groups that are doing much better. So to answer your question, I think there's this group in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one of the main organizers, her name's Lisa Bowman, and I always like to hold her up as a really good example. So they have several people in their intercadre group, and then there's another. We went to this event called Midfest, which is like a spontaneous Liberty campout festival.
Oh, cool.
And there they were able to meet an intercadre group from Arkansas, an intercadre group from Southeast Missouri.
Okay.
And they all came up to kind of form this regional middle cadre group. But recently, Lisa and her crew, they all came over and built a big garden in her backyard. Something that would have taken her multiple days, they were able to knock out in 3 hours. And they had dinner together and relaxed. They also do a monthly meetup that is kind of like serves as bringing people into the fray for recruitment or vetting, right? But it's just a voluntarious meetup. And then it's like they always talk about freedom cells. So when people are interested, then they can kind of vet them for their group or encourage them to create another group. And then there's a group in Dallas, Fort Worth. They probably have one of the highest concentrations of freedom cell people in DFW. This girl, April, they have an intercadre group and they're all parents. And she lives on land. They grow food together. I did a consult with them. So they're like, you grow this, we'll grow this over here. Let's share tools with one another. One thing they're working on for the broader middle cadre is creating trade routes. So DFW is a huge metroplex. So the guys that live far east of the city, rather than driving all the way west to meet up with homeboy to exchange tools or whatever, or contraband, they just drive to the middle meetup point, and then the other person just drives to the middle meetup point. So there's all sorts of practical uses that are already taking place right now, and it's a very beautiful thing.
Very cool.
I'm looking at you, Liz.
Why? Because he mentioned
Liz?
DFW, and I'm like, Texas, I miss you.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah. My dad's still there.
Yeah, it's a cool state.
Yeah.
Right on. DFW is crazy big.
I know. It wasn't that big when I left. That's the crazy part. But I'm glad to hear their freedom cells out there. That's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot. I was thinking of doing a contest where it's like whoever can build the first formal middle cadre, which is 8 groups of 8, then they get some sort of prize or some encrypted phone or something. I don't know.
Burner phone.
Yeah. Because there's folks in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, wow.
There's folks in India that have intercadres. There's some in Atlanta, in Tulsa and the mid-continental area, DFW, Houston, Austin.
Well, I'm surprised Melbourne's not cranking them out.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a really hardcore police state. And I think that can kind of be inspiration for us to redouble our efforts. Because if we don't get our acts together here in the States, then that's what things are going to be like here. Thankfully, we have guns. So a lot of the stuff they're doing there just wouldn't fly. And I'm personally pleased to see like all these right-wing militia types that are like showing up at the Capitol and causing a big stink with these lockdown protests. So it's not my scene per se, but the fact that there's that kind of resistance makes me feel optimistic about the prospects for liberty. Like mandatory vaccines, that's not going to fly in most places in this country.
No.
Well, then they're not going to try it either in a real way. It's going to be backdoored through, like I said, the corporatocracy where you don't have to, but I mean, we're not going to hire you. It's just company policy,
Yeah.
Like, we don't need you to have a college degree, but, we need you to waste a bunch of money on college because that's how our economy's propped up. So,
Get in debt. But that's one of the great use cases for the Freedom Cell Network. We have this technocracy being developed, which is essentially ruled by experts in technology. And what they want to do is if you don't have your immunity passport, for example, or if you're not vaccinated, then you can't be employed here, or you can't go to this grocery store. And so the Freedom Cell Network, not only is it a better way to live and organize as human beings, it honors our sovereignty, but it's also a defensive mechanism so that we can continue to trade, we can continue to be employed or do business or be entrepreneurs. We can continue to have food co-ops and food networks without needing to rely on those centralized systems that will soon potentially be shutting us out. So it's like they're going to try to shut us out of their society. And it's like, well, we don't want to be a part of your society anyway. It's a pretty ugly society and it's all like trauma-based and controlling. So we're going to do our own thing over here.
So we should be looking for 50-year-old Russian women. That's what we need to be doing.
Say what now?
Wait a second.
You lost me.
I don't know what's going on now.
Well, no, people that lived the Soviet bloc, is essentially what we're doing is talking about organizing our country the way that they used to organize.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, the
Okay.
government's
Yeah,
there,
they
but
get from
fuck it.
anybody.
We're out here because it can't do
Yeah.
shit.
I thought you were talking about like a marriage citizenship thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was also confused. So
Well, I'm not entirely sure what Jacob's situation is. I know that his wife is Eastern European, but
really, that's where we're going with this. We're not going there with this. Back that train right up. Okay.
well, we're not going to bring in an Eastern European woman to have in the house. You like borscht, right?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Live-in maid?
Anyway, we should do links. Yes.
Links?
Yeah.
Like Zelda?
We could do. Yeah, Zelda works too. I'm sure that's a good use for Freedom Cells too. That's community building. But so to get involved, where do we want to go?
Oh, yeah. The best thing to do is go to freedomcells.org.
Okay.
Freedom Cells, like cells in the body.
Nice.
freedomcells.org. And from there, you can register and sign up and join the network and see if there's people in your area and just learn what it's all about. freedomcells.org.
Okay.
And then
cool.
I do a podcast also. I'd like to invite people to check out it.
Oh, by all means.
livefreenow.show. livefreenow.show.
Do you promote that on the other stuff? Because I listen to Unloose the Goose every week, and I don't know that I've ever heard you mention it.
I don't know. We don't do a whole lot of personal plugs for
Okay.
stuff, but I should throw it out there more often.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing.
One of my buddies made a joke. Like he's like, yeah, John seems like a really nice guy, but somehow he manages to get freeounceofkratom.com in like every single conversation. I'm like, well, whatever, man. It works for him.
Hey, man.
That's right. I like helping people and I like feeding my family, so I'm going to mix it in when appropriate.
There you go.
Out of curiosity, what is like the percentage of people? Is there a makeup of the kind of people that you find tend to get drawn into this? I mean, within the activist community, obviously, you've got a lot of dreamers, a lot of people that talk a lot. That's why I love the idea of actually taking real action and doing something to separate ourselves. I tend to come from like more of a Jason Stapleton school of trying to shield ourselves in all the ways that we possibly can. And usually that tends to be money, unfortunately, because sadly, the more money you have, the more you can kind of ignore what is going around you. Is there a type of person you find that gets more involved than others?
Well, the biggest promoter of the Freedom Cell Network thus far has been Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance Network.
Mhm.
So a good number of people involved tend to be folks that follow Derek, which is good because his whole thing is the conscious resistance, and there's a spiritual element, one of self-reflection, doing the work, meditation.
Okay.
So a lot of people involved have that characteristic, which is really good because as an organizer for a long time, I know that group dynamics are important and internal conflict often destroys things more than government or other problems. So for people to have that extra level of consciousness really helps. But just the same with Derek Bros' followers, a lot of people are conspiracy researchers. They're concerned with technocracy.
Okay.
There are some folks that are a little bit, I don't want to judge because I've been a conspiracy researcher, but there's some folks that kind of take things a little too far and like to make stretches and hyperbole. I noticed that element in there.
Okay.
But it's a pretty diverse group of people and it grows and grows every day. But one of the things that unites everyone is their desire to do something. They're solutions oriented. So a lot of them are well aware of the problem, been researching the problem for a while, or I think it's actually a great thing for folks because a lot of people, when they first find out about all this treachery and deception and conspiracy and false flags and all sorts of nastiness, they like go down this deep, dark rabbit hole of despair and dread and like, oh my God, how could this happen? And this atrocity here and all these government experiments and people being killed. And it's all been a big lie. But having an outlet to quickly be like, okay, wow, that's a big problem. But wow, look at all these great people that are organizing and trying to do something about it, I think will help prevent people from going too dark down that path and instead follow this path of light and love and solutions and building, creating rather than being depressed and afraid.
Nice.
Well, I guess I think the question I was actually getting at is it is people trying to approach things practically as opposed to too pie in the sky. Like we're worried about gardens and things like that and self-protection more than we are immediately trying to focus on, well, how do we start the other internet?
Well, So I have always been a fan of intention
Mm-hmm.
and like vision board and stuff. So I always make it a point to mention like really what it is that we're doing is creating our own alternative society as the state crumbles
Okay.
around us. So big picture wise, like, yeah, we want to replace the state as the means of organizing ourselves. We don't want to be dependent on government. We want to decouple from government entirely and have our own defense mechanisms, our own justice mechanisms, our own communication, our own whatever. That's where we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
They eventually spend themselves into oblivion, and we're just going to be like, hey, guys, we got something working already, as opposed to trying to force the next war state.
Nice.
Yeah, come jam with us. But on the short term, it is more practical. And how can the network and people working together benefit the individual and the family? And there's a lot of gardening, technology.
I think before you approach any of those big projects, I mean, you're going to have a lot of trust within people. It's just going to require a lot of that legwork on the ground level.
Yep, and a lot of numbers. There's already a whole lot of people that are like 100% agorists. I met some at the conference. Like they don't fly anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They try not to drive and stuff. They probably don't have tags on their car. Derek Bros, for example, he's 100% agorist. He doesn't have a checking account. He doesn't file income tax. He tries to use privacy and encryption as much as possible. So I'm inspired by the fact that there's already a lot of people already doing it. You know, it's a smaller minority, but
I mean, that's real hard to get that far deep down the well.
yeah, and it's harder when you have kiddos.
Decoupling from the financial system is that's a big deal. Just from a practical standpoint, there's not a lot of places that'll run crypto for you like that have. I guess there's ways that I've heard people get to do it. This is the one my hang up is it bugs me. A lot of people they're like, well, I still go to Walmart. I just buy the crypto gift cards, but that's still processed by Visa and.
It still goes through the dollar.
Like you're still going through the system, and like to really do it, we have to get away from that. So it's so daunting to think about. John, thank you so much for coming on today. It has definitely been a lot of help in kind of our journey and putting some things into perspective for us. And having, like I said, the vision of somebody who understands parenthood and how that changes the formula sometimes is definitely very important to me.
Well, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to speak and share my message with your audience. I really appreciate y'all bringing me on the program.
Any last minute plugs you want to get in there real quick?
No, just invite everyone to check it out. And you can always check it out and see what it's like. And there's no commitment or obligation. You get out of the network what you want to get out of it or what you put in. So again, that's freedomcells.org, freedomcells.org. And if people like what I have to say, I talk about all this stuff in depth on my podcast at livefreenow.show.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thanks.
This podcast is a proud creation of the Mad Audio Lab. For more information, check out madaudiolab.com. Peace Freqs is part of the Liberty Hippie Podcast Network. If you like what we do, be sure to check out Homesteads and Homeschools, Free Markets Green Earth, Cannabis Heals Me, and This Week in Liberpods. We're living proof that libertarian doesn't mean washed up Republican.